months, it's one of those you just keep going, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, cool. I have to get to this place right away, and my
Yeah.
car doesn't start, and this is terrible.
Yeah. I, not knowing anything about cars, I pay a lot of attention to the little lights that go on and be like, okay, is this good light or a bad light? 90% of the time, it's just a weird tire pressure thing.
Overwhelmingly,
Yeah.
it's usually that tire pressure thing. But
Or, oh, you need to go get an oil change.
I see we
And
have
then
I
they
see we
try
have
and
a,
sell you on a package.
I see you have a few people starting to trickle in, and hello. This is our usual audio verite before we get the party started at usually a couple minutes in. But let's see, actually, this is screen sharing is live. Make sure that it's actually up there. But yeah, I mean, even shout out while I'm on here, Sullivan Tire Marshfield, Brian Pacino does not do a lot of that. Hey, here's a package, here's a this, here's a that. Very straight up, has a ton of availability. And then you think about like weird, unique selling points of like things that people do well, actually calls you when your car is ready. Other places I've been to in the past would not do a good job of doing that. So
Yeah, I don't really want to spend my afternoon like chasing people up because it's like, oh, is it ready yet? No. 2 hours later, is it ready yet? No. Call 2 hours later, is it ready yet? No. Like I want my car. I want to do things. But I'm also like simultaneously feeling annoying because like the person picking up the phone, they're not responsible for any of that.
yeah, just a dispatcher.
Yeah. But it's like, okay, but if you were proactive or just had a text that went out, because I know there's all kinds of, as we work with our own CRM, it's just like you can have a system in place that says, okay, once this is clocked out and approved, like it sends the text message over. No one has to remember to do it. It'll just do it.
Automation is the beauty. All right. Well, I know we're a couple minutes past 11 here, but I know people are busy and this is recorded, so I will. And the recording is indeed on, right, Ryan? That's always worth asking. Excellent.
I popped in. It said this is now recording. That should
Excellent.
show something
Yep.
on your end that it's recording.
Yeah, I see cloud recording going on. These are good trust but verify, items. All right. And then, so I'll go ahead and punch in. So good morning, everyone. Will McPhee, System Support, Managed IT Service Provider out of Marshfield, Massachusetts. And today we are talking about 5 common DIY IT mistakes that businesses make. And so this kind of came out a little bit of an inspiration of a client that we're working with right now that they have had someone internal who's been doing a lot with a shoestring budget, and he has fought valiantly, and he's had to do a lot himself, and he's done it very well. He hasn't really made like any of the mistakes that are listed here, but it got us thinking when we were picking the monthly theme for the webinar about what are some things that when we do pick up for maybe a smaller business, like a small law firm that's a paralegal and a single attorney, the real common DIY mistakes that we see that really can lead to pain down the road that either is completely unintended or I'm just going to think about this later. So the big 5 that I see overwhelmingly across every company, and some are really good at this and some still suffer it even with our management because we can lead the horse to water, but some of these we just clean up right away and we don't really, you say that they have a choice. So one of them is like using the Windows Home operating system in your business. So Windows now really makes 2 versions that you got to care about: Home, which is great for home, personal, just you use. And then there's Windows Pro. Sure, there's Windows 11, IoT, Internet of Things, Enterprise, whatever. You don't really have to worry about those. Most business owners, Home versus Pro. The other number 2 big one, password sheet on your computer. If those Excel sheets with passwords are a hacker's gold mine, they have scripts that go looking for them. That's a big one. Mixing the personal and business, really convenient in the short term, real pain in the long term. Considering that your offsite backups are just by a USB drive. And then something that we really see with companies that have been kind of set up from the beginning is the owner's email account as the admin. So let's dive into this Windows 10 Home. Well, kind of how do we get here? So it's really that a company needs a computer fast. They go to Best Buy, they get a laptop, they bring it back, and they immediately start setting it up. because, hey, they hired someone. Oh my God, I just remembered all these forms and I-9s and everything else I got to do. And I forgot to get this person a computer. And I'm going to rush up to Best Buy and Braintree. I'm going to buy it, whatever one's like best for business. None of the computers at Best Buy have Windows Pro on there. They don't sell any with Business Pro on there because Best Buy is a consumer goods store. It's for consumers, it's not for businesses. And then if you tried to go to like most other places, especially that might be like business computer store focused, you might get kind of dazzled with a bunch of like whatever they're talking about. But really, the big hook is like, all right, how much do you really care about the version of the operating system? Where can it really go wrong? And the answer is that when you start up the computer for the first time, Windows is going to ask you for an account to get the computer set up. 9 times out of 10, it's the owner of the business is setting up the computer because the owner has to do everything, the poor bastard, and they will use their personal account to set this up. So now you have the owner's personal Microsoft account hooked up, and this can go wrong in a whole bunch of different ways. Microsoft doesn't know that you're a business, doesn't know that you are trying to set this up for another human being because, as far as the computer is concerned, you are setting it up for you with your personal account. So, one of the first things it does as a little convenience item for you out of the box is it will hook up your OneDrive, and then all your files that are in your personal OneDrive will now download to that computer into the documents and desktop section and pictures. Hopefully, it is apparent quickly as to why you don't want your personal account suddenly downloading all of its information to a computer you're going to hand off to a new employee. I saw this in the wild with a firm that exactly this. The owner ran out, bought a computer, and the owner's tax returns were on every computer for every employee that they could just go to documents, and there is 2021 owner's name, tax return, client copy. I mean, I'm all for corporate transparency, but there's a line, right? That's probably a big one. It's, people get sensitive about those things. Then also too, all those family photos you might have stashed in OneDrive. If your kids are using your account for Xbox or something, this all goes really sideways really quickly that now your personal stuff is all over the network and you can't do a thing about it because as far as the computers are concerned, you set it up for you. It doesn't know that Jimmy is the one who's actually working on something. Kind of harping to the same point. Again, that person is now accessing that machine as you. And even if you set up password, PIN, whatever, you're really not doing yourself any favors. And then also, too, the other tough part of why you want Pro over Home is that when you're setting these computers up out of the box, in Home, Microsoft doesn't really give you an option to set up a local user to say, hey, I want just local user R. Richardson. And it's just a local account. There's no cloud stuff attached to this because Ryan's going to open it up and he's going to go straight to my LinkedIn and he's just going to do LinkedIn marketing. And that's the only thing that Ryan gets. Although obviously Ryan here does a lot more. I'm just picking on him for the sake of the webinar. So Windows Home is missing a bunch of features that are necessary for businesses. And probably the biggest one that everybody should be concerned about is BitLocker drive encryption. So Microsoft and Windows stuff and a bunch of awesome features preloaded into the operating system for the value that you get. And so Windows Home to Pro is typically a $99 upgrade. Go on Amazon, $99 license, Windows 11 Home to Windows 10, 11 Pro upgrade. You get a key, you punch that key in your settings, the computer reboots after like 45 minutes, and you're good to go. Most of the stuff that we have for value that we provide for clients is that, hey, we're watching it, and that if something goes sideways, we're on standby to make sure everything happens. But then managing the BitLocker is really important. And the other thing that gets really nasty for BitLocker encryption is that we have seen in a couple of computers recently that have Windows 11 Home that BitLocker is getting turned on under the person's home account. And technically, it's not supposed to have BitLocker, but the feature's enabled. And it's claiming that the key is getting backed up into that person's account, but then the person can't remember what personal account they set it up with. So a lot of those features are where stuff really can go wrong there. And then there's other things too, like you can't join to Entra AD. So if you're using the Windows Pro like the Windows Business Premium logins, or even if you have a local domain because you're using a line of business application that runs locally, your computer can't join those resources because it's a home computer. It thinks that it should be home in your living room. So how do you fix it? Little license cost. $60 must be $60 is a legacy one. If you go on Amazon right now, it's $99. And it's worth the headaches that it saves, and it sets the computer up right for the appropriate management down the road for individual user accounts, BitLocker encryption, which you do want to have on that in case somebody steals the computer, they can't get whatever information is on the hard drive. So buy the license, 99 bucks. It's an easy upgrade. There's YouTube videos on how to do it. Worth the investment. And then you really want to make sure that, hey, I'm a business. I get the business stuff. This is my next favorite one. Password sheet. The hacker's gold mine. You can do so much damage with this. And we have one of our programs, Huntress, if it detects a password sheet, just looks for the word password in a file name, it flags it to us, tells us where it is, and we tell our clients, like, hey, you have a password sheet, you need to get rid of this. Because any attacker worth their salt, as soon as they get something to land, will run a script that does the same thing, looking for a password sheet. And if they find your password sheet, a lot of what they can do with it is they not only have whatever logins that you have there, and obviously the two-factor, hopefully you have it turned on for everything, but I know some websites don't support it. Now you're running into issues with the two-factor. Now, not only do they have what your passwords are, but they also can determine the theme that, like, this guy uses a lot of Bruins players, or this guy uses a lot of mountains in New Hampshire's names. Because let's face it, we're humans. We have to remember things. We like things that relate to each other. And so we pick themes in our passwords. Don't tell me that you don't, because I know you're lying. So the password sheet is a gold mine into not only what you have access to, like here's all my logins, here you go, this is everything I got, but also how if one of those passwords is wrong, what one of them might actually be. But it's good that and even if you are randomizing passwords, that's awesome. But it still is a list of everything you have access to. And a file, it's real easy for somebody to just move a file around. You really want something that's a little tougher to be able to lock down. And again, for where it goes wrong, they're plain text, they're easily stolen, they're lifted very quickly. People are really kind of running around with it. Attackers are trying to get to it when they first access a machine. They're trying to, first thing, because they have this, can they get more? Because if they get more, they get paid more. There's also different ways you can try and extort someone, be able to sell that information to someone. I mentioned before, your password strategy is, are you truly randomized, or do you have a particular affinity for Bruins players or Patriots players or Boston sports teams? And then other thing too is might not always just be someone hacking into your machine. Could be one of your employees impersonating you. And if you have a falling out with said employee and they just have the sheet of passwords, there's no way to turn them off without going to each of the probably 60 something accounts that you have and changing the password, which makes for a bad day of having to fire someone even worse. So this is where the fix it answer is get a password manager. There are a ton out there. I don't recommend using the ones that are built into the browser, because the ones that are built into the browser, you can very easily ask it, hey, dump all my passwords into an Excel file. That's considered a normal thing for the password managers. It doesn't trip your antivirus. The only thing I've seen it trip is a security incident and event manager, one of those log monitors for a computer, that the event for a browser credential dump is initiated. It's a little thing that Google puts in of like, here's what I did today. And then we get an alert that that happened. And it might be someone is backing up their passwords, and good for them. But 99 times out of 100, something is dumping passwords, and that needs to be cleaned up right away. So a password manager, we like Keeper here. We found that its ease of use is better. We've seen Password Pass, Dashlane, LastPass. And you might say, well, what about the risk of like them getting breached? Well, sure, but honestly, the probability of you getting breached and having your passwords in plain text on a USB drive is way more risky than somebody nailing a major target of dash lane. I mean, LastPass had a breach, sure, but I mean, how different is it at the end of the day from Equifax's breach or whatever? It's kind of, you got to balance it a little bit. And I doubt somebody in breaching LastPass really started logging into all the people that they could. And again, don't use the one in the browser. You want it dedicated outside, requires two-factor to get in. That browser one can export, goes and the AV won't detect it because technically it's normal behavior. It's odd, but it technically is a normal thing for a browser. And then also too, this bears repeating ad nauseum. Everyone gets their own login to a resource. Common logins make life harder if somebody leaves. It also makes life harder if somebody screws up and you're trying to figure out who did this. Now, there are some instances where, hey, you do need to use common logins for XYZ. And this is where identity managers come in. These are things like Okta, Passly, Microsoft 365 single sign-on. That's where these more sophisticated things come in because it could be like we have a client that deals a lot with health insurance, and the health insurance platforms, despite all the crap they make us jump through for HIPAA, because remember, HI stands for health insurance in Health Insurance Portability Protection Act, that those logins for like Blue Cross Blue Shield have a single, there's no multi-factor, there's no unique identifier for like a single firm. So they have to use, to be able to protect their clients' information, they use an identity manager that they have to log into Okta to be able to then log into the Blue Cross Blue Shield or whatever benefit platform, and then they can't see the password. It just injects it and then zips off. Those are for more robust build outs. But again, the idea would be like, hey, somebody made a change on this website at 11:17 a.m. on November 14th. And then you can pull the identity manager platform and say, who was that? Who just logged in? Oh, it's Kevin. What the fuck did Kevin do? Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't swear on these, but should be should be
I
a
have
little
to learn how to bleep. It's going to be great.
make like a goose honk or something. Right? All right. Anyways, but avoid common logins at all costs. And if something is a common login, make something unique behind it to get to it. Shared mailboxes, ticketing systems. There's plenty of ways to do that. All right, on to my third common mistake that I see. This is mixing business and person. And overwhelmingly, again, I see these in the web browsers, the final frontier of IT security, that somebody will log into their Google or Edge or Firefox on their work computer, and they will use their personal Gmail account or whatever, and it will pull over all the shortcuts, all the extensions, and all those passwords into that Google Chrome profile. And the extensions are real nasty because those extensions get permissions to web pages that other things don't necessarily get. And you'd be surprised what some of them do. I caught one the other day as I noticed in my YouTube watch history that something wasn't right. There was for some reason, my YouTube account was watching like 8-hour Roblox streams. And, I do regular audits of most of my account history just to check in what's going on. As what the hell is this? I'm not watching it. I pass out with the baby and there was a YouTube stream or whatever. It's like, no, no, no. So I start investigating. I go through some of the Google security checks, sign everything out, sign back in, change a password, change an MFA method, and it still shows up the next day. And I was like, somebody has access to a YouTube account, and this isn't okay because they have access to a YouTube account, they have access to a personal Gmail account. So I started noting the behavior of where my YouTube account was used. Okay, here I'm on my phone. I have this Chromecast. I hear this. It turns out this old open SEO extension here on my work computer that was used for marketing purposes way back like 2-3 years ago before I had Ryan handle all this, that it was reporting data back and was using my account to run something in the background. So not only was it RAM hogging on my machine, which I was very cross about, but effectively, hey, it was using a system to sell views. So if you're wondering how some places get more views or whatever, things that you can use to buy them. And apparently somebody was doing that, and that was no good. And so there was me not following my own advice for, hey, here on the work computer, there was a Google thing. And so I followed my own advice and tore it out. Now it's something completely separate. And then especially too, kind of extending to it, beyond just browser profiles getting mixed, the other big one is you start using your work email for personal things. So, you use your work email for signing up for a certain shopping thing or for this or for that. And, especially if you're an employee of a company, you won't have access to your work email forever. So if you sign up for your doctor's office using your work email and you're terminated for whatever reason, you have no right to that email address. That's owned by the company and they can do with whatever they want with it. I unfortunately have seen it for some of our clients where somebody set up a whole bunch of personal stuff under their work email and on their work computer, and the termination was messy. And I need the data off that computer. And the answer was, no, you don't. And they tried to bring it up in court, and the courts were pretty like, nope, very company asset. You have no right to it. Corporate owned. You were using it as part of your role. Courts had no remorse for them. Pretty well established. Now, granted, if you're an employer, the thing you have to think about is acceptable use policy. We set the little pop up when you log in that you have to click OK that says, hey, this is property of Acme Corporation. It's subject to the acceptable use policy and blah, blah, blah. Some really base language of like, thou shalt not do bad things on the work computer, and this is a work computer.
Oh man, even like you're doing your online shopping with your work account, and you're just like, don't worry, no one's gonna find this out. Like,
and then even to business owners,
no.
you're using the work one for a bunch of personal things, and someday you retire and someday you sell the business or whatever. Same deal. You might not have rights to that email address. And if you want rights to the email address, you put it in writing. And then, you're retired, you're off, and a whole bunch of stuff is running in that work email. Now you got to go to all those platforms and swap it to whatever new Gmail account you set up. Real pain. Yeah, that's again a company email address setting up access to different personal services. Just don't do it. Just don't do it. So where does it go wrong? Yep. If your personal stuff, bank, doctors, etc., tied to the work account and you no longer work there, you get no access unless you get explicit permission. And again, if employees are using personal accounts, so there's also the vice versa. Employees using a personal account to access work resources, you, the business, have no right to that account. A great example is ChatGPT stuff recently. A lot of ChatGPT onboarding very quickly is Gmail, a personal Gmail or a personal Microsoft account. And so if people are doing a lot of stuff for ChatGPT with the chat histories and stuff generated, and they're doing it under personal accounts, you, the business, don't really have access to whatever that is. You also don't have any insight into what are they pumping into ChatGPT that may or may not be proprietary to your platform. So again, it kind of reduces some of that insight in understanding your risk profile by having those personal accounts just sprinkle in. Or you could have them communicating with clients that like, oh, our email system couldn't get this picture, but send it to this personal account. Now all the communications for a given client are running through a personal account. And if you have something that's a really close relationship, now the business doesn't own that relationship, the individual does, which can be a huge problem for a client retention. And then also too, ad nauseum, personal accounts don't usually have the same protections as the professional. The enforcement of MFA, audit logs, suspicious sign and monitoring, security incident and event management. So there are backdoors into the company. And I was mentioning about extensions. Somebody could have their personal Chrome account installed some malicious package tracker, or like, show me when my UPS package is showing up. And they install it at the home computer on their home Gmail account. And then they sign into their home Gmail account at the office. And now that extension is reading all the web browser activity in the office. And it's not like the antivirus can't really see it because it's a thing in the browser. The antivirus just sees the browser and it just sees Google Chrome and goes, yeah, sure, whatever, dude. But then within Google Chrome, it's firing stuff off site. Really, the only thing I've seen that prevents malicious extensions from installing. If it's already on there, it's very difficult to catch unless you do managed browsers. But it's Threat Locker for application allow listing. It's been the only thing I've seen that really grabs it. So how do you fix this? Reduce the pain points that cause employees to use their own accounts. So if they're using their own accounts because I can't do this, I can't do that, I need this photo thing, Work on those things and it's worth it. The ounce of prevention is worth the pound of cure. For whatever the employee needs the personal account to be able to do their job, may invest in the tools that puts there. This is overwhelmingly a human problem. So put the rules and controls in place that minimize the work and not you minimize the use of non-work accounts. If you can, push out the policies on Windows 11 Pro that turns off the password manager for Edge and Chrome. There are ways to do that through automated policies. Have the little pop-up when somebody signs in that says, hey, this is governed by an acceptable use policy and thou shalt follow it. This is a lot of HR stuff. There's some tech, but a fair amount of HR as well. And then centralized account management and creation when possible. I mentioned identity managers using the Microsoft 365 platform. That's really where, hey, everybody gets the one login because that reduces a pain point. They just got to remember one. And they get into the one, they get into whatever they need. And then that way too, if something happens down the road, they win the lottery, something else doesn't go right, you take the one and it turns off the many. So make your life easier. All right, this is the other fun one. Backing up to USB drives. We still see companies backing up their critical business data, QuickBooks, you name it, to a USB drive that they then turn into a quote unquote offsite by just taking it home. And once upon a time, i.e., 10 years ago, 8 years ago, this was the best option for an offsite backup when the cloud backup technologies were really, really rudimentary. But thank God they aren't anymore. And during that time, when we would be checking backups, when I first started here, that was one of my first jobs, was checking backups and doing that every 48 hours. We would be, hey, we noticed you haven't swapped USB drives, and we'd send an email to a client. But the other thing we would notice is somebody would be like, hey, did you swap that drive? And they go, yeah. And then I'd say, well, it's showing that the drive isn't connected, so the drive would have just failed. So it would have been kaput. And yeah, there's a 30% of those USB drives would fail in a given 6-month period. So we'd have to be like, oh shit, quick ship them a USB drive, get it plugged in, get the backup running again. And for where it goes wrong, I have a stack of places that just backing up data to a USB goes wrong. You forget to take something home. Just, oh, yep, whoops. Now there's no assurance that, hey, if something does happen to the building, the stuff's off site. This is the biggest one. And I argue it is bigger than somebody just stealing the USB drive and having a copy of your critical backup data because somebody nabs it out of your car. No one tests the backup to make sure the copy they have is viable for restoration. Testing backups, even when we did it back in 2014, 2016, we would do it once every 6 months because the process was so arduous. Because with a USB backup, we'd have to go to the client site, grab the backup that was supposed to be the offsite, take it on site, take our whipping boy server, perform the restore. And it was a day and a half affair for a single server to see if the restore was good. There was no automating it because Windows Server backup was just like, but instead now, the process we have now for backing up critical data is it takes a copy of the backup makes it off-site, and once the thing's off-site, it's then tested. And it's tested by starting up the computer. So it tries to start it up, and if it sees a login screen, it says we're good to go. Because if we see a login screen, chances are, we got through any of those like OS crash bugs. So, and that happens every day, and it's automated, which means it's worth every freaking penny and is way better than me having to drive to Boston to pick up a USB drive. So this is the big one, because the worst time to figure out that one of the backups you took is not viable is when you need it, because at that point it's too late. And again, it's making sure that for just taking a USB, nobody's actually double checking that the backups are happening, that things are actually off site, and reacting to something that says a backup's not successful. You need a system that at least says, hey, I'm not doing good here. And then when something's not doing good, you jump on it, you take care of it, and you track it. And sometimes it might just be like, hey, you need a restart, and you give it a whack, boots through. Or sometimes it's another great example is you have a backup. And it turns out in the backup copy that you took, a Windows update was waiting in the wings. And so you definitely do not want to sit there waiting for a Windows update to complete. I should have said Windows update. I think I said backup. Sitting there waiting for a Windows update to complete when your server is crashed and everybody's biting their nails waiting for like things to come back online. So you got to test them. You got to put eyes on them. And then the other one, which isn't mentioned here, that if it is just on a USB, I doubt people are password protecting them. So somebody could just steal it and then have a copy of all your data. And now you have an unencrypted copy of everything you ever cared about. And that's not good. But there's a reason I mentioned the testing one, because it's way more likely that you will have a crappy backup that doesn't work when you need it than you will have a USB getting stolen out of your car. So how do you fix it? Follow the 322. 3 copies, 2 different media, 2 different locations. So for us, that's, hey, a local copy and a cloud redundant copy. And then you've got, you know, 2 media, physical location and offsite, and then cloud, and then, hey, same deal. And get an automated system that tests the backup, but they still need supervision. You got to make sure that you got to trust but verify that those backups are actually going through. All right, the last one, and this is one that kind of lurks under the surface a little bit, and just something that not a lot of people are aware of, and is always something we see when we first engage with companies, is that if they're buying an email system, GoDaddy, direct with Microsoft, direct with Google, whoever the owner is will set their account up as the global administrator that, can create other accounts and do everything that you need to do. And the real danger is now you have your day-to-day email account has access to everything. So the big risk there is that if, God forbid, something happens, now, you get an email from a vendor that you trust, and it turns out they were compromised and they're talking about something you were already talking about, and the social engineering works perfect, and you click on the malicious PDF. The attacker not only now just has the wonderfully delicious owner's email account, they also have global admin, so they have access to the entire company. And the owner, who usually doesn't want most of the protections because of the inconvenience, is the most prime target for phishing, because they are the easiest one to Google for figuring out who works at this company, who owns it. All that stuff is just on the state website. You just go through the Massachusetts business registry and just say, who owns this? Oh, here he is, president. And I can probably guess his email. I can probably Google his email, send him a phishing thing. So really, I think I've really hit I've just noted for the big one where it goes wrong. Sharing access is just the owner's email as global admin. It has too much power, for lack of a better term. So you want to limit that to say, hey, that if something happens to this account because I get tricked, we minimize the amount of damage that we can do. If, especially too, if just the owner is there, they're the only ones with access, and they're out of the office for whatever, and hey, you got to do an emergency, somebody got a phishing email and you need to lock down one of your employees' accounts, you need to make sure that you can take care of that quickly. And hey, owners get sick too, and we deserve days off too. So got to put in the infrastructure to not always be on. And so this kind of brings me to, for amount of damage and everything that's there, how do you fix it? Just create a dedicated admin account without an email. So what we do for especially owners that still want admin access, we'll make admin first name at whatevercorporation.com, and then has the multi-factor, totally different account. And then the idea is like, okay, hey, it's time for the admin creds, and the desk drawer opens, and the specific badge comes out of the desk drawer, and it's, when you're going to do admin things, you kind of have a little bit more process around it. So it kind of hammers home to the, like, be careful with what you're about to do. Do not use your daily driver as an admin. So the daily driver being whatever account you are using day in, day out. This is what you give out to people at networking events or whatever. Like, that's the public one. Sure, it should be able to receive a bunch of information, but if somebody were to take over that account, limit the damage. Hey, they can just see the emails. That's fine. And then especially too, this extends to computer logins as well. If when you log into the computer, you have admin rights when you're logging in. So you click on a link, you click on that malicious PDF, and something runs, it will run with admin privileges, and it might be able to do a bunch of damage on the computer itself, extending beyond email. And then again, we do the same thing. Admin first name for a login, to just say, hey, if you need to do admin things, because QuickBooks loves doing updates every week, and for some reason it needs admin privileges to be able to change how it attempts to sell you credit card processing information. give it a different admin so that when that pop-up comes in that says, hey, who's the admin account? Admin will, and here's this different password, and I don't use this every day. And the only thing it does is install QuickBooks updates. So it has its piece as well. So for key takeaways, those are some of the big 5 that I see clients overwhelmingly, just don't cut corners. Set them up with the idea of everybody a unique login so you can answer the who, what, the where, the when, the why, and it's kind of up to you, but answer the who, what, and where, and when. And individual accounts with least privilege is the best way to do it. Backups aren't optional. If you care about it, always think about if this data went on a scale of 1 to 10, how panicked would I be? And it's usually either a 3. Like if I lost the slides to this webinar, it's a 3. Ryan did a wonderful job on these files, but hey,
be a 10 for me, but
for me, I just riff, hey, my Microsoft 365 break glass account that's in our documentation system online that's SOC 2 compliant, blah, blah, blah. And then if that goes down, that's a full 10. So we take a backup to an encrypted USB that goes in a drawer here in the office. So backups are required and they should be tested. So, we take that USB, plug it in a different computer, make sure it opens up, make sure all those passwords are in there. Pray to God we don't have to use multi-factor for anything.
Ooh.
And then set permissions for the user access control. People put a lot of trust in their employees, and that's fine. I'm always a big fan of trust first. But, the idea is just, hey, how much damage can somebody do if they're unfettered? And then make sure it's their own unique account for it as well. And then last, hey, IT's an investment. If you put money into the tools that help you do your job day in, day out, they will serve you well. If you have, I think of it, bookkeeping and legal. You can go to LegalZoom. You can toss like $40, like a couple bucks for somebody to do some quick agreement for somebody doing fly-by-night stuff. But when push comes to shove, is that LegalZoom person going to actually try it in court? Same with bookkeeping. Go with some cheapest bookkeeping service for this, that, and the other thing, and you continuously go like, I don't understand the cogs or how any of this stuff is working. Good bookkeepers are expensive, but man, if it makes a ton of sense when you're getting the monthly reporting and you're watching your accounts receivable go down and everything, IT's no different. Something you touch day to day, and it's part of that back office trifecta of legal, accounting, and IT. All 3 of them need to come together to make sure stuff works well. And with that, I'll open it up to questions and answers. If there's any questions from the audience, be more than happy to answer them, especially for any how-tos, any other DIY disasters. We love stories too.
Yeah.
Always love more DIY disaster stories. Pretty quiet out there, and I get it. I've been talking tech for like 40 minutes, so it can get a little boring. So
yeah, everyone's hungry for lunch.
Yeah, I'm bumping up against that 12 o'clock lunch. So, all right. Well, if there's anyone out there that maybe they've been doing it DIY for a little bit and they don't really know where to start, we have Buyer's Guide, walks you through the questions that for a service provider coming in, arming it so that you sound intelligent. We came up with this, and then ChatGPT must have hit it as a crawler, because I saw a lot of the similar questions when somebody was asking us once, and an all too familiar format was listed in the email of like, that looks like ChatGPT based on the formatting. So all too familiar stuff, but systemsupport.com/IT buyers guide. Give that a download. All the questions are in there. Help you really evaluate to make sure you're making the right pick. And selfishly, I think we are the best pick. But anyways, that's about all. I hope everybody's having a wonderful day. I'm recording this here in November of 2024, so I hope everyone has a wonderful Thanksgiving and wonderful holidays. And here's to when the leaves get green again. And everybody have an absolutely fantastic day.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.